Whew, it is a windy day today, like super windy, but I'm gonna make this video, and I sure hope by the time I'm done with this video, and hopefully you hang through the whole thing, you'll have a different kind of perspective on kind of where I'm at with this whole frame flex issue. Hang tight, I'll be right back. Okay, so right off the bat, let me apologize. I want to say a heartfelt sorry to those of you who have taken any offense or who feel I've been only supporting the RV manufacturers and the frame manufacturers or whatever or whoever you feel that I've been supporting in lieu of the problems and challenges that a lot of people are going through, that you guys are really facing. I think one of the challenges that I have when approaching a topic like this is it's not happening to me. And because it's not happening to me, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. You know, if I go into my RV and I look at certain aspects of the frame, I'm not seeing issues that you guys are. Now, I know there's going to be some speculation out there that the Brookstone that we have has this custom Lippert chassis on it, which is totally not true. So the chassis or the frame that this is built on is a standard frame that's delivered to the folks over at Coachman, and they built their current mid-bunk on that frame. So they already had the frame. The floor plan inside and the parts that we had to change for this collaboration unit were simply the mid-bunk area right here and where we positioned the entrance to it. But the frame itself is a vanilla off the Coachman assembly line frame that was delivered to them to build the standard 398 MBL. So first of all, I hope that adds some clarification to, you know, to our specific situation. And we're not having frame flex. We're not having any type of issues with the amount of weight when it drops down with the pin box, any of that working against or working non-aligned with the actual superstructure of the RV. We don't have bolts that are loose. We don't have a lot of situation or a lot of issues that people are going through with their specific situation. And I do want to apologize. Most of the channels, if not all of the channels who are creating videos on this topic, are specifically going through it, or they're channels that have kind of popped up in support of it, but typically haven't been RVers or folks who have big fifth wheels who aren't going through it. So when I got involved with this, I purely wanted to deliver information from a technical perspective, not to try to take sides. That's the goal. And that's how I feel now even. I at no point wanted to take sides. All I wanted to do was try to add a little bit of clarification around what I personally thought might be happening. And the very first video I made on this was before I ever reached out to the folks over at Lippert, and it was to give my take on what frame flex was. I actually titled that video Frame Failure. And I really wanted people to have a clear understanding of how I felt the dynamics of a fifth wheel frame truly were. Now, to kind of prove that, a lot of people think, you know, you haven't been very consumer focused here, JD. You've been very, you know, very much in favor of supporting the frame manufacturer or Lippert, and you haven't really come out to say, I support the consumer. Well, I do support the consumer. I've always been consumer focused. An example of that is every time I review a fifth wheel and I walk around, I always point out if I feel the tires should be upgraded. I always walk around and point out if I feel it's lacking suspension components that it should have. And one big one that I always point out is the fact that when I see a receiver, a towing receiver on the back of a fifth wheel, I always make the point that I do not recommend that you tow with a fifth wheel, or really with a towable or behind a towable, because it can add a lot of leverage, it can add a lot of weight, and potentially stress out the superstructure of your RV more than I would suggest. Now, I made a video specifically talking about that when the fifth wheel was actually parked over here. And in that video, I pointed out why I don't feel it's a good idea to tow a trailer behind a fifth wheel, especially a larger fifth wheel. Even if you have the 7-way connector, a 4-way connector, and a receiver there that says it's rated for towing, typically 3,000 pounds towing, 300 pounds tongue weight. And in that video, I try to express how that weight, that movement, that motion can really put stress along your sidewall and your superstructure, because a lot of people felt that it's totally safe because everybody does it. And I kind of wonder if those same people who went out in defense of towing behind their RV are either supporting or not supporting the folks who are having frame issues, frame flex. If we've all established, everybody's established at this point that frames flex, it's inherent to every type of towable unit, whether it's a flatbed, lowboy, commercial trailer, gooseneck trailer, cargo trailer, it really doesn't matter. They all flex, including RVs. Now, I will be the first one to agree. I am going to shout this and preach this from the mountains moving forward, that I do believe there needs to be a much better securement method to attach the body superstructure of the RV to the frame. There has to be some way to make a frame more rigid. Otherwise, again, everything inside is going to break apart. Your furniture, your cabinets, all of that stuff will break apart if it's not a rigid structure, without adding tons and tons and tons of weight to the frame. Now, some people are going to say, why don't you just reinforce the areas that need reinforcement? Why doesn't Lippert just put more gussets, more cross members, more bracing up here if this is predominantly where that problem is occurring? And that's a pretty valid question, to be honest. We don't need to invest 2,000 pounds of extra weight into a frame when maybe an extra 500 or 600 pounds can beefing up an area enough to where you just mitigate the risk of something happening if there's a detachment that takes place, right? If the sidewall detaches from the frame section. And when I talk about securement methods, so the way it typically works, and I've talked about this, is you have this metal beam right here. It's a tubular beam with a piece of wood inside of it. Then the manufacturer of the RV has their instructions on how to take their aluminum channels, fill them with wood, attach them to the side, drill through from the other side with lag bolts. They're bolts, not screws, but they look like screws, but they're designed to go in. They bite into the wood and they pull this together in like 6 different spots on each side. And then there's a flange sticking out off the bottom that they want you to then drill into on the bottom right here. And that's supposed to create the superstructure. So there's going to be a lot of folks probably in this video that leave comments saying, why on earth would that be the process to attach the two? It's just a recipe asking for failure. You're going to run into a situation where going down the road, because our poorly maintained infrastructure system, you're going to go down highways, it's going to bounce around, it's going to jostle, especially for those full-timers or for those extended campers that are constantly traveling, and those lag bolts are going to work their way out. They're going to work themselves loose, and you're going to have a problem eventually with bolts becoming loose and this detachment issue becoming a thing. And I actually agree with you guys. I don't think that it's a very smart concept. The only thing I can kind of point back to, though, is if you look at the folks who've specifically been having the problems, it's generally going to be full-timers, and in many cases, second owners. Now, I'm not criticizing you for being a second owner of an RV, so don't take that. Just listen to what I'm saying for a second. What I'm saying is we don't know how many miles were put on it before the second owner purchased it. That's all I'm saying. Was it 1,000? Was it 10,000? Was it 100,000? But let's just assume that folks who are full-timers, travel a lot, put a lot of miles on their RVs, are the ones that are predominantly having this issue. I'm not saying all the time, I'm just saying predominantly, like in 80%, 90% of the cases. And if this design of this method of attachment wasn't a okay method of attachment, and I know we need more than okay, we need really great, we need excellent methods of attachment, not just okay, but you would see it with a lot more RVs. You would see this problem. Now, I know it's probably happening to folks who have never experienced an issue. They've never seen an issue. So they go along their way, they continue to travel, not even knowing that there could be a potential problem that's happening up here. But I talk about this because of the millions of fifth wheels that are currently out on the road, if we're only seeing it in a very small percentage, and again, guys, please don't take this the wrong way. If it were happening to me and it was a legitimate issue where lag bolts were missing and it was detached because there was a manufacturing issue with either the frame, the RV, or the attachment of the two, I would be extremely upset as well. But it's not happening to me. But what I'm trying to say is that because it is a relatively small number of customers who are having it, and of those customers, almost all of them have been able to point to the fact that either bolts were missing or the construction of this portion right here was not done properly. And then that led to a frame-related issue. Now, if your frame had an issue in spite of all of that, well, then of course that falls on the frame manufacturer. Nobody is saying that the frame manufacturer doesn't have any responsibility here if there is a frame-related issue that is because of shoddy welds, horrible welders. You know, I honestly look at the welding situation as this. And gosh, the welders on my channel will probably agree with me silently, but then possibly disagree with me in the comment section. It's hard to find two welders who would ever complement each other's work. I'm not even kidding you. I watch YouTube videos, Instagram shorts, TikTok videos of these insanely talented welders being completely criticized to death in the comment section. So I kind of take things with a bit more of a grain of salt whenever it comes to understanding how good a weld really needs to be in order to pass the muster test that a lot of welders subject it to. So that said, you know, when I toured the facility at Lippert, they said they had over 600 plus welders working in the factory at any given time, which often means that they have multiple shifts. And in those multiple shifts, I would imagine that they employ possibly thousands of welders in a relatively small town, Elkhart, Indiana, Goshen, Indiana. These aren't big populated areas where they have access to, you know, all these technical schools that are just loaded with these professional welders who have been doing it since birth. So you take the welders that you're able to get, which there are a lot of them in Indiana. I mean, they work for the RV manufacturers, they work for component manufacturers, they work for all sorts of other industries. It almost seems as if you're a welder and you want a job, move to Indiana because they probably will have a job for you. So we look at that whole situation of welders who are available. They say that they have a certification program. They say that they inspect the welds. But again, when you produce 1,000 plus frames per day, there is always a chance that bad stuff will make its way through. Lazy people just are going to show up. They don't really care about their job. They may be a great welder at home when they weld their own barbecue pit, but then they come to work and they just don't put a heck of a lot of effort into it. But of the 600 or the 1,000 or the thousands, I would suspect that some of that stuff makes its way through. And if it does, it needs to be taken care of when it's discovered by the RV manufacturer before they start building on it, so it can get sent back to Lippert to get taken care of, or it needs to be fixed by Lippert when a customer gets that unit. But in reality, when that frame makes it to an RV manufacturer, that frame is just a frame. There are several periods of time when things are being attached to it, when the axles are being mounted, when the suspension is being mounted, that people could say, this looks like crap, it needs to be sent back. This is not a good frame. We need it sent back. So it's a failure from a lot of folks. It's a failure from the frame manufacturer, Lippert, who produces the frame, if they allow a shoddy frame to make it outside of their facility to a RV manufacturer. And it's a failure on the RV manufacturer if they still get that frame and decide to build upon it, hoping you won't see a problem. Now, at the beginning of this video, I talked about my frame, that this is the standard 398 MBL frame. This was nothing special. They had these stacked up in their yard, and they picked this frame to build this collaboration unit on because of the interior. But when people started having these problems and videos started going live, I wanted to check my frame. So, you know, I opened things up. I know you see these locks right here, but you can actually still just take this off without the lock. It's just kind of a deterrent, if anything. But I looked at my frame, and I wanted to see if I was experiencing any of the crazy sloppy work. And you see a lot of silicone up here. There's silicone in here, or actually right here. You see they've covered some stuff up with tape. But I'm looking at the welds, and I didn't see anything extraordinarily nasty about how my frame was made. Now, there could be welders up there who are gonna be like, you know what, every piece of the frame needs to have the type of weld you see on TikTok and Instagram. It needs to be absolutely insanely well done. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I don't even think those welders, if they have, you know, other jobs and they're building something on a mass production line, are doing welds like that. But that's, to me, a decent weld. You know, it's got a little bit of slag here, but overall, everything is pretty good. And I went around looking at different sections of my RV, even the bottom. Am I happy 100% with like the finish that they put on the frame? I looked under my frame as well, and I'm not gonna say that there aren't areas for improvement, I mean, I don't like the surface rust that's formed on my RV over a period of time. I come back, I try to clean it off and spray paint it down, but of course it's powder coat, and you're not really supposed to do that. You can touch up with things, but powder coat is more of a layer that is kind of baked on versus just sprayed on. You see a little bit of slag right there. I don't, in some ways see that as being a horrible weld if it's holding and it's done the way they want. Now, I know some folks are going to say that needs to be a continuous weld, but I don't know. I mean, if it's engineered that way and I haven't had an outrigger fail, it's hard for me to criticize it. I can always say, man, that doesn't look like the TikTok weld that I saw, but I'm not a welder. And I know, again, welders love to criticize each other, but I sometimes wonder, that same welder, when he goes home and he makes his own barbecue pit, if he focuses more on making that than the assembly line product that he's making. Anyways, again, I want to jump back, and I do want to say, I apologize to folks who have believed that I've only taken one side on this issue. Believe it or not, a lot of stuff is working in the background, a lot of stuff with manufacturers, and I hope that there's change that comes from this for the folks who are looking for that. Even if it means that you have to go find a RV with those specific changes. Even if it means that the RV might be a lot smaller and a lot heavier, or if it's this long, it's going to be significantly heavier. But if that's what it takes for some people to have a better feeling or impression about buying an RV, if it means that the frame is 4,000 pounds heavier, and it means that the way they secure things add a lot more weight, if that's what you're looking for and you understand the consequences or the payoffs or the compromises that have to go into place at that point, then you may have those options pretty soon. You may have the option of a frame that has so much reinforcement done to it that you're like, oh my gosh, this thing is a beast, but I need an F450 or I need a F550 or a Ram 5500 to haul it because it weighs so much. As long as you understand that that might be the result and that the price of the unit might go up a lot more than you think because anytime they add a lot more materials, they're adding more cost. As long as you're okay with that. I'm not giving the manufacturers a pass, but just think about it before you start flaming me and trying to roast me in the comment section. Think about what I'm saying. If they add more material, if they make the frame significantly more robust and heavier, it's going to add weight, it's going to add cost, and only certain manufacturers are going to want to build on it. And if those manufacturers build on it and you like what they've built, even if the price is significantly higher, that is going to be a win for a lot of folks. They'll love that. Going out and buying like a Ram 5500 or an F550 or a heavy-duty truck, if that's the vehicle you have to get to tow it and you're okay with the price associated with all of that, again, a lot of people will be thrilled to death that certain manufacturers might take advantage of those types of options. Anyways, again, from the very beginning, I just wanted to say I do apologize because I'm not experiencing those issues. And if you are, and you are someone who is deeply impacted by this because your RV is falling apart, because it's just shoddy, they did a horrible job building it, and you don't feel safe in it, I truly feel sorry for you, and I truly believe the manufacturers have to step up and fix it and take care of you as a customer if it's their fault. If they're the ones responsible for building it that way, and you've done nothing other than enjoy the RV lifestyle, you've never off-roaded with it, you've never pulled it through conditions that you know could have potentially damaged it, then I truly believe the manufacturers are responsible. It's their duty, and I would demand that they step up to fix your RV and to take care of you, because these things are stupid expensive. They've only gotten more expensive, and when you pay as much as people pay and have the perception that that amount they pay should get them excellence, then they should step up to it. I mean, I know when you look at things like Living Vehicle, right, the RV manufacturer I filmed, not a ton of people watched those videos because when they saw a travel trailer roughly the size of the surveyor here that costs $350,000 to $800,000, they were like, are you stupid? Are you ridiculous? Why would I ever spend that much money when they can go and get something like this and probably have just about the same amount of fun knowing that they saved hundreds of thousands of dollars? Well, if you look at a Living Vehicle, the thing's virtually fail-proof. I mean, the thing is built so well that you would never have an issue with it. And if you have the money to spend to get that type of excellence, there are people that do. They just never want to know that a problem with their RV, besides a fluke or besides a very rare instance, could actually affect them. And they'll spend the money to make sure that it doesn't. But for the rest of us, including myself, I'm never going to have that kind of money to spend on an RV. And something like this is going to be something that I want to enjoy. I want to have a good experience with. I don't want to be plagued with major issues. And I would say anytime you have a perception of a frame issue or a body issue, that's a major issue. Just like a slide out could be a major issue. You know, it ruins it for you, and it makes you upset, and it makes you really mad and passionate about getting things fixed, which that's your right. Again, if I had the problems other people are having with my RV, which we're not, but if I did, I understand where they're coming from. I do. I would want it fixed. In many cases, I wouldn't even care why it happened or what the technical reasons for it happening are, or if I like the frame or like the RV manufacturer, like how it was built. I wouldn't care. I would just want it fixed. And I think that that's where a lot of people's anger and frustration is coming from, and they believe that that's not happening. So again, I get what you guys are saying. I truly do. If you want to hold it against me because I'm trying to go at this from an unbiased perspective, from an RV ownership perspective where I'm not having the problems and I'm not using my RV nearly as much as a lot of the people who have the problems, then you can. I mean, I've been a target for quite a while with all this, and I think some folks believe that I truly think that the RV manufacturers are doing like this phenomenal job, like there's nothing better that they could be doing. And I totally disagree with that. I believe we are in an industry that constantly needs evolution. It constantly needs improvements. It constantly needs reevaluation, and it constantly needs to be focused on making customers happy. And by making customers happy, I mean turning out products that aren't failing, or turning out products that have a lower likelihood of failing because they're trying to address things before they fail. So I hope all of that is clear and makes sense. Anyways, again, I truly appreciate you all for watching the channel. I know there's been a lot of folks out there who criticize and hate my channel. They think I've gone this weird corporate direction where all I care about is the business. And that's not true. It really isn't. And I hope if you watch enough of my videos, you would know that that's not true, because I spend so much time criticizing things that I think RV manufacturers could be doing better. So if I've offended you, if I've made you feel like you're belittled or less important or not a focus or a priority, I apologize for that. I truly do. It's never been the intent of my channel. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. I sure hope it was informative. I sure hope that it's helped a little bit to understand at least the reasoning of an RVer like ourselves, who are weekend warriors, who don't use our RV full-time like a lot of people do, who are experiencing these problems, and who is trying to actually help the industry as a whole produce a better product for customers. I hope you understand the direction that I came from. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and I'll talk to you again very soon.